Act 1 Segment 1, The Intruder's Shadow. Snow fell like quiet ash across the Scottish Highlands, each flake dissolving against the window pane before it could settle. Inside the small timber cabin, warmth radiated from a crackling hearth, orange light licking at the rough-hewn walls. Ethan sat sprawled on a leather armchair, one boot unlaced, the other kicked toward the fire. The long drive from Inverness still throbbed behind his eyes, the kind of fatigue that made the silence seem thicker, heavier. Across the room, Liam packed his coat with military precision, zipped, buttoned, checked for weatherproofing twice. He was always like that, meticulous, disciplined, the kind of man who treated nature like a living opponent. Ethan admired it once. Now, after months of distance and words left unsaid, it only grated. "You sure about heading out now?" Ethan muttered, watching his brother slip gloves on. "Storm's rolling in." Liam smiled faintly, a flash of white teeth beneath his beard. "A quick jaunt, that's all. Air's clearer before the snow thickens." "Clearer? It's bloody freezing." "Then stay by the fire." Liam's tone softened. "You've done enough driving for one day." He lifted the latch and stepped into the dimming light, boots crunching through the powder. The door shut, muting the world outside. Ethan stared at the empty space his brother left behind, listening to the faint whistle of wind seeping through the eaves. The Highlands had always held a strange power, vast, ancient, indifferent. Even as boys, when they hiked these same glens with their father, Ethan remembered feeling watched. Not by animals, but by the land itself, by something older. That unease crept back now as twilight deepened. The flames threw long shadows against the walls, and the silence began to hum. He poured himself a measure of whiskey and sat by the hearth. "The Highlands," he murmured, echoing Liam's old words, wild and unforgiving. The glass trembled faintly in his hand. He told himself it was the wind. Time blurred. He might have dozed, half dreaming of wind howling through valleys, of bare trees bending like silhouettes of reaching hands. When he stirred again, the fire was low, embers pulsing faintly. The clock on the mantel read 9. Liam had been gone more than 2 hours. A dull panic took root in Ethan's chest. He rose, scanning the window, but the glass reflected only his own worried face. The snow outside was thicker now, wind swirling it into white walls that devoured the horizon. He pulled on his coat, jammed a headlamp over his beanie, and grabbed a flashlight and hatchet from the wall. "Just a quick check," he muttered, voice cracking in the empty room. "He's fine. He's bloody fine." The storm bit into his skin the moment he stepped outside. Snow hissed across the open ground, and the pines loomed like black monoliths. His boots sank deep into the drifts, each step an effort. The path curved up the ridge, Liam's favorite route. Ethan followed it, scanning for footprints half swallowed by the snow. He found them. 2 sets, side by side, leading away from the cabin, and then abruptly diverging. One path veered into the woods, lighter tread, Liam's size. The other was heavier, deeper, and fresher. He crouched, brushing the snow aside with trembling fingers. The prints weren't Liam's boots. They were longer, with narrow heels, the kind you'd see on older hiking gear. A stranger's. The wind howled through the trees, and something inside him seemed to twist. He called out, voice torn by the gale. "Liam?" No answer, only the hiss of snow against pine needles. The prints led deeper into the woods. He followed, flashlight beam cutting through the dark. Minutes stretched into an hour. The cold bit through his gloves, numbing his fingers. Each sound, the creak of trees, the groan of shifting ice, made him flinch. And then, ahead, a figure moved through the mist. "Liam?" Ethan called again, stumbling forward. The man turned. It was Liam, coat dusted in frost, face pale, eyes wide with something beyond exhaustion. He walked quickly, almost too quickly, his steps sharp and deliberate. Jesus Christ, Ethan panted, catching up. Where have you been? I've been shouting myself hoarse. Liam's gloved hand clamped over his mouth. His breath came ragged and fast. Turn back, he whispered. Now? Get inside. Lock it down. Ethan froze. His brother's tone, steady, commanding, edged with fear, cut through the cold. What happened? Someone's out here, Liam hissed. Followed me. I thought I lost him, but he's still in the trees. The woods creaked around them, branches shifting under unseen weight. Ethan's heart slammed. Who? A hiker. Liam shook his head. No. Not a hiker. I saw his face. The look in his eyes told Ethan everything. Whatever Liam had seen wasn't ordinary. They moved quickly, half running, half sliding down the trail toward the cabin. Every shadow looked alive. Every gust of wind felt like breath on the neck. When they burst through the door, Ethan threw the lock and dropped the bar, chest heaving. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the fire's crackle filled the silence. Then Liam sank into the armchair, head bowed. I saw him up the ridge, he said finally, voice low. Tall. Hooded. Standing dead still between the trees. Thought it was a deer hunter at first, but he didn't move, not even when I shouted. Just mirrored me. When I turned, he turned. When I stopped, he stopped. Ethan swallowed hard. Maybe he's local. Some poacher. Liam met his eyes. Then why was he smiling? The room felt smaller suddenly, the air too thick to breathe. Ethan busied himself with the fire, stoking the flames higher. They'd wait it out. Morning would bring clarity. They dragged furniture against the doors, checked the windows twice. Outside, the storm intensified, the wind howling like a wounded thing. To keep themselves grounded, they talked about anything but what lingered beyond the walls. Old stories, childhood hikes, their father's ghost tales by the campfire. It helped for a while. By midnight, exhaustion dulled the fear. Liam took the couch, rifle across his knees. Ethan sat by the window, watching the fire's reflection blur against the glass. Outside, the snow swirled endlessly, erasing the world. He must have nodded off, because the next sound jolted him awake. A dull, rhythmic thump against the cabin wall. Then silence. Then another. Closer this time. Ethan's hand closed around the hatchet. Liam, he whispered. You hear that? Liam stirred, blinking blearily. The sound came again, thud, thud, thud. They exchanged a look, silent agreement passing between them. Liam grabbed the flashlight, motioned toward the door. They stepped onto the porch. The cold hit like a wall. The snowstorm had eased, replaced by a deathly calm. The world glowed faintly under a low moon. Their fire pit smoldered, the embers still warm. Then they saw it, footprints, circling the cabin. Large ones. Deep ones. A full loop, stopping at the door. He was here, Ethan whispered. Liam crouched, touching the edges of one print. It was perfectly fresh. His close. The forest stretched before them, silent, endless. Every shadow felt alive. Then, from the ridge, a single flash of movement, a figure standing just beyond the tree line, head tilted, watching. Ethan's stomach dropped. That's him. The man didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stood there, black hood rippling in the wind. Liam raised the rifle, finger trembling. Don't, Ethan hissed. If it's some nutter. But before he could finish, the figure turned and vanished into the trees without a sound. Not running. Just gone. The brothers stood frozen, hearts hammering in unison. Back inside, Liam muttered. Now? Act 1 Segment 2, The Intruder's Shadow, Part 2. The door slammed behind them, the sound sharp as a rifle crack. Ethan threw the bolt, hands shaking despite the heat of the room. The hearth fire still burned, casting wild shadows across the walls, but its comfort had curdled into menace. Every creak of timber felt like breath, every flicker of flame like movement beyond the glass. Liam paced by the window, jaw clenched. The rifle's barrel gleamed in the light, his finger resting just shy of the trigger. "He's not just wandering," he muttered. "He's watching." Ethan stared into the flames. "You said he mirrored you before, yeah. Maybe he's not even real. The storm, the dark, it does things to your head." Liam shot him a look. "You think I imagined that face?" The room fell silent again. Ethan rubbed his temple. "Then we wait till dawn. Police, ranger, someone from the village. He'll be gone by then. He's not leaving." Liam's voice was quiet, certain. "He found us for a reason." Outside, the wind picked up again, rattling the shutters. The brothers stared at the door, neither willing to say what both were thinking. If he wanted in, he could have tried already. Hours bled by in uneasy silence. The whiskey bottle dwindled, the fire sputtered and cracked. Somewhere beyond the cabin, a branch broke, a clean, sharp snap that made both men freeze. Liam cocked the rifle. Ethan reached for the lamp, dimming it. They listened. The sound came again, crunching snow, slow and deliberate, circling the house. "Windows," Liam hissed. "Check them." They moved in tandem, one to each wall. Ethan's heart drummed so loud he thought it would drown the world. His breath fogged the glass as he peered through it, nothing but white blur and shifting shadows. Then, as he leaned closer, something struck the window from outside. He stumbled back, cursing. A dark shape pressed against the glass for a heartbeat, pale face, eyes black as coal, mouth twisted in a grin, and then it was gone. "Liam?" Ethan gasped. "He's right out there." The front door rattled violently, then stopped. Silence swallowed the room. Liam moved to the door, rifle aimed. The handle turned, slowly, deliberately, and then released. A whisper bled through the wood, a low voice that slithered across the air like smoke. "Let me in." Ethan's blood turned to ice. "Jesus, he's talking." Liam's face had gone white, but his hands were steady. "Not a word," he mouthed. Another whisper followed, closer to a growl this time. "I know this house. I know who built it." Ethan pressed his back to the wall. "He's bluffing." But the man's next words froze him solid. "Two brothers. Always two. One leaves. One stays." Liam's eyes met his, wide and terrified. How the hell would he know that? Ethan didn't answer. A heavy silence pressed down on them. Then, without warning, the door shuddered under a violent impact. The first blow splintered the latch. The second made the hinges groan. On the third, wood cracked and a pale hand shot through, clawing for the bolt. "Get back!" Liam shouted. The rifle roared. The blast lit the room like lightning, deafening in the small space. The hand jerked away, leaving blood smeared on the timber. The footsteps retreated, crunching into the snow. Liam reloaded, breath ragged. "He's hit." Ethan grabbed the rope coil from their climbing gear. "Then we finish it." They pushed into the storm, wind slicing their faces, snow whipping like razors. Blood trailed across the porch, thick droplets leading into the trees. They followed the crimson path down a narrow gully, flashlights shaking in their hands. The forest swallowed them whole. Sound died but for their boots and the whisper of snow. The trail ended abruptly by a fallen pine. No body. No footprints leading away. "Where is he?" Ethan whispered. Liam scanned the tree line. "He can't have." The voice came again. This time behind them. Too slow. Ethan spun, beam slashing across the dark. The intruder stood 10 feet away, half shrouded by the snow, coat torn and slick with blood. His face was streaked with grime, eyes glowing faintly under the headlamp's glare. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't lunging. He was smiling. Then he moved. The man lunged with animal speed, slamming into Liam before Ethan could react. The rifle went spinning into the snow. Ethan shouted, swinging the hatchet, but the stranger caught his wrist mid-strike, twisting until pain flared white-hot. The hatchet fell. Liam roared, tackling the man into the drift. They rolled, snarling, kicking, the snow stained with crimson where the intruder's shoulder tore open. Ethan dove for the rifle, hands slipping on ice. A gloved fist cracked against his jaw, he tasted blood. Ropes? Liam barked, pinning the man with his knee. Get the ropes. Ethan scrambled for the pack, pulling the climbing line free. He looped it around the intruder's arms, hauling tight. The man writhed and hissed, teeth bared. His breath reeked of rot. Liam slammed an elbow into his ribs, forcing stillness. Who are you? He spat. What do you want? The man only laughed, a hoarse, rasping sound that didn't belong to any sane throat. Then he whispered something that made Ethan's stomach turn. Not the first time, brothers. They bound him tight, hands shaking. Ethan hauled him toward the porch while Liam covered them with the rifle. The intruder fought like a wild dog, spitting curses, muscles straining against the rope. The closer they dragged him to the firelight, the more wrong he looked, clothes decades old, soaked boots cracked, nails black and thick like claws. Get the cuffs from the car, Liam ordered. Ethan nodded and bolted to the Land Rover. The headlights flared, slicing through the storm. When he turned back toward the cabin, his gut clenched. The porch was empty. Liam, he shouted. No answer. Only the storm, hissing through the pines. He sprinted back, boots sinking deep. The ropes lay in the snow, cut clean through. No blood trail. No footprints. He burst through the cabin door. Liam? From the hallway came a muffled grunt, then a crash. Ethan charged forward, slipping on the wet boards. The bathroom door was ajar, light spilling across the floor. He pushed it open. Liam was on his knees in the corner, eyes wide with terror, shaking his head frantically. No go, he rasped. Ethan froze. Behind him, a shadow stretched across the floor, long, angular, wrong. He turned. The intruder stood in the doorway, drenched in blood and snow, one hand clutching a pistol, rusted, ancient, the metal black with age. His grin was all teeth and madness. Don't, Ethan said softly, raising his hands. The man tilted his head. Been a long time since someone fought back. He raised the gun. Ethan moved on instinct, charging forward. The shot split the air, deafening. Pain burned across his arm as he collided with the man. They crashed into the wall, the gun skittering under the sink. Ethan drove his shoulder into the intruder's chest, but the man clawed back with inhuman strength, biting, snarling, eyes wild. Liam grabbed the weapon, cocked it, and aimed. Get clear. Ethan rolled away as Liam fired. The blast threw the man backward into the tiles. He hit the floor hard, chest smoking. His eyes stared upward, glassy. For a moment, the only sound was the rain hammering the roof. Ethan sat panting, blood soaking his sleeve. Did you kill him? Liam lowered the gun, trembling. I don't know. They approached slowly. The intruder's body lay still, pale against the tile. But when Liam nudged him with his boot, something shifted, the faintest exhale, like a sigh. Then, impossibly, he smiled again. Not done, he wheezed. Ethan didn't wait. Ropes? Now? They dragged the limp figure to the porch, binding him to a thick post. Thunder rolled over the peaks, lightning flickering across his motionless form. Bags were thrown into the Land Rover, adrenaline their only fuel. As they roared down the muddy track, headlights carving through the storm, Ethan looked back. The cabin was a shrinking glow in the dark, and on the porch, lightning flashed again. For a fraction of a second, the intruder's head was lifted, eyes gleaming. Watching them go. Act 1 Segment 3, The Intruder's Shadow, Part 3. The storm had spent itself by morning. What had been a chaos of snow and thunder the night before now lay hushed beneath a pale sky, the Highlands reborn in silence. The Land Rover hummed along the narrow road that cut through the valley, tires spinning mud and ice. Inside, Ethan's arm was bound in a crude sling, the wound throbbing beneath the bandage. Liam drove with both hands locked tight on the wheel, eyes fixed ahead, as if the act of looking away would let something catch them. Neither had spoken since they left the cabin. The adrenaline was gone now, leaving only exhaustion, and questions that didn't fit into words. Ethan finally broke the silence. You saw it too, right? His eyes, after you shot him. Liam's knuckles whitened. I saw them. They weren't human. For a long stretch, the only sound was the engine's low growl and the faint ticking of sleet against the windshield. Then Liam exhaled. I don't care what he was. He's dead. Or should be. Ethan looked out at the snow-veiled ridges, their slopes scarred by dark veins of forest. That's the thing, though. Should be. They reached the main road by noon and pulled into the nearest police outpost, a squat, concrete building half buried in snow. A red-haired constable emerged from the doorway, jacket unzipped, cigarette in hand. His expression soured the moment he saw their faces. Lost hikers, he asked dryly. Liam stepped forward. There's been an attack. Our cabin up near Glendaver, man broke in, tried to kill us. We fought him off. The constable raised a brow, taking in the mud, the blood-stained clothes, the rifle case. You fought him off, did you? Ethan's patience frayed. You think we shot ourselves? That got the man moving. Within minutes, they were ushered inside, seated under harsh fluorescent lights. A detective in his 50s, Inspector McRae, took their statements. His lined face gave little away, though his eyes flickered with something between skepticism and intrigue as the story unfolded, the figure in the woods, the break-in, the fight, the disappearance. When they finished, McRae leaned back in his chair. So you left him tied to a post on your porch? Yes, Liam said. Alive. Barely. And when you looked back? He was gone, Ethan answered quietly. But there was movement. Like he was watching. McRae drummed his fingers against the table. And you're certain he wasn't a vagrant? We've had wanderers up that way before, drifters, survivalists. Some of them unwell. This one wasn't unwell, Liam said. He was hunting. The inspector's brow creased. Did he say anything? Name, reason? Ethan hesitated. He said, 2 brothers. Like he knew us. That made McRae pause. He reached for his notepad. Your family's cabin, yes. How long has it been in your name? 3 generations, Liam said. Our grandfather built it. McRae nodded slowly, thoughtful. And you're sure no one else has been using it? Liam's eyes narrowed. Why? The inspector turned the notepad toward them. Because 5 years ago, a shepherd went missing near Glendaver. His pistol's registration matches the number you just gave me. The same weapon your intruder used. Ethan's stomach turned. You're saying that was his gun? I'm saying, McRae replied evenly, that the man who owned it was never found. Neither was his body. The room felt colder suddenly, as though the storm had seeped into the walls. Liam leaned forward. You think our intruder killed him? Or was him, the inspector said. Or thought he was. Ethan's pulse quickened. That doesn't make sense. The shepherd would have been in his 40s at least. This man, he looked younger. McCrae regarded him with that same unreadable stare. Some disappearances don't stay buried long. Highlands have a way of keeping what they want. He closed the file and stood. We'll send a patrol to your site. If there's blood, prints, whatever, we'll find it. But they didn't. By evening, 2 cruisers returned from the cabin. McCrae's voice over the phone was tight, subdued. No sign of your intruder. No ropes. No blood. Cabin's a wreck, though. Window smashed, furniture overturned. And there's something else. Liam gripped the receiver. What? The floor, McCrae said. There's something burned into it. Symbols like runes. I'll send a team tomorrow, but it's not vandalism. Liam's face drained of color. He thanked the inspector, hung up, and turned to Ethan. Runes. Ethan's laugh was hollow. You think it's a prank? A bunch of locals screwing with us. Locals don't carve Norse runes into floors, Ethan. What, then? Some cultist. Liam said nothing. He was staring out the window, eyes unfocused, as though seeing something far away. Our grandfather used to tell stories, he murmured. About the man who came before him, an outlaw who built the first shelter up there. Said he vanished in a storm, same ridge where we saw him. Ethan frowned. You think that's who it was? Some ghost? I think something's tied to that land, Liam said softly. And it's not finished with us. They spent the night in a small inn outside Avermore, low ceilings, stone walls, the smell of damp wool. Ethan couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the intruder's grin, the way his eyes gleamed like coals. He heard the rope straining, the laughter fading into the storm. Around 3 a.m., he rose, poured a glass of water, and glanced out the window. The road was empty, just snow and shadow. Yet for a moment, he could have sworn he saw movement by the tree line. A flicker of shape, tall and still, watching the building. When he blinked, it was gone. He told himself it was nerves. Trauma. A trick of light. But when dawn came, he noticed the prints in the snow outside their window, 2 sets, side by side, leading up to the wall. One pair large and booted. The other barefoot. Later that morning, they met McCrae again at the cabin. The storm had stripped the glen bare, leaving it raw and glistening. The cabin's roof sagged under ice, and the air reeked faintly of smoke. Inside, scorch marks marred the timber floor, dark circular sigils burned into the wood. No footprints. No blood. Only the faint echo of something that had been there. McCrae crouched beside one of the runes, tracing the edge with a pen. Old Norse. Means binding, or containment, depending on the dialect. Containment? Ethan asked. For what? McCrae looked up, eyes grave. For something dangerous. Liam's jaw tightened. And you think this man, our intruder, broke it? Maybe he was the thing it was meant to contain. The words hung in the air like frost. McCrae stood, dusting his hands. We'll file the report, but truth is, this'll go down as trespass, maybe assault. Beyond that, I can't say. Highlands are full of ghosts, lads. Some wear flesh for a while, till the land takes it back. Ethan's throat was dry. So what do we do? The inspector gave a small, tired smile. Don't come back here. That night, they drove south through the endless dark. The mountains rose behind them, black against the moonlit sky. Liam barely spoke. Ethan watched the road, the headlights slicing through mist that seemed to follow them. He couldn't shake the feeling that something had hitched a ride in their silence. Hours later, as they reached the lowlands, the storm finally broke. Rain streaked the windshield in sheets, washing the snow from their tires. Ethan leaned his head back, eyes closing. Then he heard it, a faint click from the glove box. He frowned, sitting up. "Liam, did you?" But Liam was staring ahead, jaw locked, white as bone. "Ethan," he whispered, "don't look." Ethan froze. "What?" Liam's voice cracked. "Rearview mirror." Slowly, heart hammering, Ethan turned his eyes toward the mirror. A pale shape sat upright in the back seat. Hood drawn low, head tilted, eyes like burning coals. Ethan screamed. Liam slammed the brakes. The car spun, tires shrieking, mud and water flying. When it stopped, both brothers twisted around. The back seat was empty. Only the faint outline of wet footprints on the leather remained, two, side by side, fading as they watched. Neither man spoke for a long time. Then Liam reached for the ignition with a shaking hand. "Drive," Ethan whispered. They did. Through the rain, through the valley, until the cabin and its haunted ridge were nothing but memory. But neither of them would ever be free of it, the feeling that somewhere, in the dark corners of the Highlands, the intruder still waited, smiling, for the brothers to come home. Act 2 Segment 1, Echoes of the Ancestral Hearth. The rain came first, thin needles of water driven sideways by the moorland wind, hissing through the heather like whispers of the dead. Owen Hargreaves leaned forward in his seat, squinting through the windshield as his Land Rover crawled up the dirt track. The world outside was a blur of mist and rock and skeletal trees. Dartmoor stretched ahead in endless grey folds, a place the living had long abandoned to silence. He'd told himself this trip was for restoration. His father's bothy had decayed into ruin, and Owen, ever the rational son, would reclaim it. Patch the roof. Mend the stonework. Lay to rest a few ghosts of memory. But now, staring at the horizon where fog devoured the land, he wasn't so sure who'd come here to be mended, and who to be consumed. He parked beside a collapsed stone wall, engine ticking as it cooled. The air hit him like ice when he stepped out, sharp with the scent of wet peat and decay. 2 miles to the bothy. He slung a rucksack over one shoulder, flashlight and crowbar in hand, and started walking. The path wound through a valley drowned in mist. Heather brushed his knees, glistening. The old pump house, nothing more than a rusted skeleton, loomed on his left. The silence pressed down until even his own breathing felt intrusive. He'd grown up on his father's stories of this place, the moor that swallowed men whole, the village that vanished without plague or famine, only whispers. "The land remembers," his father had said once, face lit by firelight. "It remembers what we did to it." Owen had laughed back then. He didn't now. By the time he reached the bothy, the light had bled from the sky. The structure rose out of the mist like a tomb, its roof half caved, ivy strangling the timbers, a single window staring blankly over the moor. He forced the door open, hinges shrieking in protest. The smell hit first, damp rot, mildew, and something older, like rusted metal and stale sweat. "Jesus," he muttered, sweeping his beam across the interior. Rubbish nests filled the corners, torn blankets, cracked bottles, mold-caked tins. Squatters or drifters, long gone. The hearth was choked with ash and bones of old fires. His boots crunched over broken glass as he stepped inside. He unpacked his kit, spread a tarp, and began to clean. Hours passed in a blur of motion, the rhythm of sweeping and hammering a strange comfort. By nightfall, he'd carved out a space by the fireplace and lit a small blaze. The fire crackled weakly, painting the walls in ochre light. Outside, the rain had ceased. But the silence felt heavier than before. Owen sat by the fire, wrapped in a blanket, sipping instant coffee from a tin mug. His hands trembled slightly, not from cold, but from the uncanny stillness pressing at the windows. The bothy's wooden beams creaked and settled. Wind breathed through unseen cracks, almost like murmured voices. He tried to laugh it off. "Wind," he said aloud, voice too loud in the confined space. "Just the bloody wind." But when he closed his eyes, he heard it again, a low, dragging sound along the outer wall, like fingernails on stone. Then silence. He rose, every muscle taut, and grabbed the flashlight. The beam cut through the dark, catching only the glimmer of wet stone. Nothing moved. He circled the bothy once, breath misting in the cold, then returned inside, locking the door behind him. Sleep came late and shallow. Dreams twisted into flashes of his father's face, eyes hollow, mouth whispering words he couldn't hear. When he woke, the fire was dead, and dawn had painted the sky a bruised grey. He forced himself into routine. Coffee, gear check, repairs. It grounded him. By noon, the bothy's outer wall stood sturdier, patched with fresh mortar. Sweat stung his eyes, mixing with drizzle. He stepped back to admire his work, and froze. Across the moor, perhaps half a mile away, a faint glow flickered through the mist. A lantern. Someone, or something, was moving among the ruins of the old village. Owen's pulse quickened. The map had marked that place as abandoned since the 1800s. But now, the light bobbed slowly through the fog, as though someone walked with purpose between the skeletal remains of cottages. Then, just as abruptly, it blinked out. He stood there a long while, waiting for it to return. It didn't. That night, the storm returned with fury. Rain lashed the roof, thunder cracked like musket fire. Owen huddled near the fire, journal open on his lap. August 14th. Saw a light in the village ruins. Lantern. Fire. Maybe local scavengers. Feels wrong. Too quiet afterward. He paused mid-sentence. A sound, a knock. 3 deliberate raps on the door. His pen froze. He waited. The wind howled. Then it came again, 3 sharp knocks, patient, almost polite. Owen rose slowly, heartbeat roaring in his ears. "Who's there?" he called, voice cracking. For a moment, nothing. Then, through the storm, a voice, rough and low, like gravel sliding in a bucket. "Harrison. Old mate, it's me. Open up, will you? Cold as the grave out here." The mug slipped from his fingers, shattering. His father's name. He edged closer to the door, pulse hammering. "Who are you?" A pause. The voice softened, almost friendly. "Lived down yonder. Helped your DA build this place. Heard there was a visitor. Thought I'd pay respects." Owen swallowed hard, the air thick as lead. "My father's gone. Died years ago." Silence. Then a chuckle, dry, humorless. "Pity that. He promised he'd come back. Said he couldn't leave us unfinished." Lightning flared through the shutters. In that flash, Owen thought he saw a shape through the window, tall, cloaked, face obscured by rain and grime. When darkness fell again, the outline was gone. The voice shifted, no longer friendly, but sharp, needling. "Open the door, boy. Let's toast the dead together." Owen stepped back, shaking his head. "Go away." The tone fractured. A snarl replaced speech. "You think you're safe in there? I've walked this moor longer than you've breathed. Open the door, or I'll drag you out myself." The doorknob rattled violently. Then fists, pounding, relentless. Wood splintered. Owen stumbled back, knife in hand, breath ragged. "Get away," he shouted, though his voice barely rose above the storm. For a minute, it seemed the door would give. Then, silence. The pounding stopped. The presence was gone. He stood there, trembling, blade slick with sweat. Minutes crawled by. Then, faintly, from somewhere beyond the walls, came laughter, low, rasping, echoing through the fog. It faded into the wind. Owen didn't sleep. He waited, eyes fixed on the door till dawn. When morning finally came, pale and sickly, he stepped outside. The rain had stopped, but the earth around the threshold was churned into deep, human footprints, leading up to the bothy and back toward the village ruins. He followed them for 100 yards before they vanished into the bog. By the time he reached his car, the mist had thickened to blindness. He drove without looking back, heart hammering, as the moor swallowed the bothy once more. He never returned. Act 2 Segment 2, Echoes of the Ancestral Hearth. The road out of Dartmoor twisted like a serpent through the fog. Owen's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that the leather creaked. His headlights stabbed through the white haze, revealing nothing but swirling mist and the suggestion of motion just beyond sight, as though the moor itself shifted around him. He'd driven for nearly an hour before realizing he didn't recognize a single landmark. No crossroads. No ruined chapel. No signs of life at all. The GPS blinked no signal. He laughed once, a dry, humorless sound. Classic, he muttered. Lost in the 21st century. But even as he said it, a pulse of dread crawled up his spine. He'd left the bothy before dawn, terrified of what daylight might reveal. Yet somehow, the moor refused to let him go. He slowed the car to a crawl, squinting through the fog. And then he saw it, a glimmer through the veil, faint as candlelight. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. A single window, glowing amber. The inn. The same sagging structure he'd glimpsed from the tour the day before. He shouldn't have been anywhere near it. He should have been miles away. But there it stood, defying all logic, its broken sign swaying, the word foxglove barely legible beneath decades of grime. Owen hesitated. Every instinct screamed keep driving. But the fuel gauge hovered near empty, and the isolation gnawed at him. He needed bearings. He killed the engine and stepped out into the cold. The inn loomed larger with each step, its slate roof bowed like an old man's back, the air heavy with the scent of damp wood and decay. The front door creaked open at his touch. Inside, shadows, dust, and silence. Yet the hearth glowed faintly, embers still alive. "Hello," he called, voice echoing. No answer. He stepped closer. On the mantel above the hearth sat a collection of photographs, their surfaces warped, images faint. He lifted one gingerly, brushing away soot. The figures were faded, but he recognized the place instantly, the bothy. Freshly built, decades ago. Two men stood in front of it, smiling proudly. One was his father. The other, a tall man with a thick beard and dark, piercing eyes. The photo slipped from his fingers, landing face down on the dusty floorboards. A voice drifted from behind the bar, calm, almost amused. "Come to settle your father's debts, have you?" Owen spun, heart slamming against his ribs. A figure stood in the half-light, tall, broad-shouldered, features obscured by the flicker of the fire. He hadn't heard the man enter. Hadn't heard anything. Owen forced his voice steady. "Who are you?" The figure stepped forward, the light revealing a face, not monstrous, not ghostly, but worn. Human. A man in his 60s, clothes threadbare, eyes sharp as cut glass. "I worked with Harrison," the man said, lips curling into something that might have been a smile. "Long time ago. Before he ran." Owen swallowed. Ran? From what? The man ignored the question, wandering closer. His boots left damp prints on the warped boards. "He built that bothy with me. Promised me half the land, half the peace. But then your DA found something in the peat. A stone. Carved. Said it was older than the hills. He chuckled, a dry, mirthless sound. I told him to leave it be. But he wouldn't listen. Said it sang to him. Owen's throat tightened. You talking nonsense. The man's eyes gleamed. I. He reached into his coat and tossed something onto the table. It hit the wood with a dull thud, a small stone, black as coal, carved with spirals that twisted inward endlessly. Owen felt a chill bloom in his chest. Where did you? From your father's grave, the man interrupted. Or what's left of it. He didn't die where you think. The fire cracked violently, embers bursting upward like sparks of warning. Owen stepped back, every nerve screaming to leave. You're insane. The man smiled wider. Madness and truth look the same in this place. Take the stone, boy. Finish what your DA started. Owen backed toward the door. I'm not touching that. Then it'll follow you, the man said simply. His tone carried no menace, only certainty. It always does. Owen bolted. He tore through the door into the fog, boots sliding over wet earth. Behind him, laughter echoed, the same coarse, rasping laugh he'd heard at the bothy. He didn't look back. He sprinted to the Land Rover, slammed the door, and fumbled with the keys. The engine roared to life on the second try, tires spitting mud as he peeled away. The inn vanished almost immediately into the mist. No lights. No road signs. Just white oblivion in every direction. It took him 3 hours to find the main highway. By the time he did, the fuel light blinked red, and his hands were shaking so hard he could barely hold the wheel. He drove until the fog broke, until the moor gave way to rolling green hills and scattered farmsteads. Civilization. Safety. At least, that's what he told himself. He pulled into a small roadside cafe, the kind with fluorescent lights and the smell of fried bacon that clung to your clothes. It was almost noon, but the place was empty save for a single waitress behind the counter. She smiled politely. Bit early for lunch, love. You look like you've seen a ghost. Owen forced a shaky grin. Something like that. She poured him coffee, the mug trembling slightly in his hands. Steam fogged the rim as he stared into the black surface, trying to convince himself he'd imagined it all, the voice, the footprints, the man in the inn. He reached into his pocket for his wallet, and froze. His fingers brushed something cold. Smooth. He pulled it out slowly. The stone. Black. Spiral carved. Slick with condensation, as though it had been pulled from the earth moments ago. Owen's stomach turned. His breath caught in his throat. No, he whispered. No, I left it. The waitress looked up. You all right, love? He shoved the stone back into his pocket. Yeah. Just tired. He tossed cash onto the counter and stumbled outside. The sunlight felt wrong, too pale, too cold. The air buzzed faintly, a low vibration in his ears. He tried to shake it off, telling himself it was just adrenaline. But when he climbed into the car and looked at his phone, a message blinked on the screen. No sender. Just 3 words. We remember you. The world tilted. For a moment, all sound seemed to vanish. Then the car alarm shrieked, sharp and sudden, though he hadn't touched a thing. The headlights flickered on and off, like a pulse. Owen sat frozen, watching his reflection distort in the windshield. His own eyes stared back, and for a fraction of a second, they weren't his. They were older. Darker. Like his father's. He turned the key and drove without destination, the moor's whispers following him long after the hills disappeared in his rearview mirror. Act 2 Segment 3, Echoes of the Ancestral Hearth. The storm rolled across Dartmoor like a living thing, swallowing the horizon in curtains of grey. By the time Owen reached the edge of the moor, rain lashed the windshield so hard it blurred the world into abstraction. He drove blind, heart hammering, the black stone heavy in his pocket, an anchor dragging him back to something he didn't want to name. He didn't remember when exhaustion won, only that his car eventually coasted to a halt beside a crumbling sign, Warren's Hollow, population 12. The letters were half-eaten by moss, the village little more than a cluster of sagging rooftops, and empty chimneys shrouded in mist. The fuel gauge was empty. Owen sighed, gripping the wheel. Of course. He stepped into the downpour, hood drawn, his breath steaming in the cold. The wind carried a faint sound, like a bell tolling in the distance, though he saw no church. He moved toward the nearest building, its windows boarded, door half open. A pub once, maybe. The Huntsman's Rest. He hesitated at the threshold. The air inside smelled of mold and rusting iron. The hearth was cold, yet ashes still marked the stone floor in a perfect circle, fresh, untouched by damp. Hello. Only his echo replied. A single object rested on the mantel, a brass key, polished, gleaming in the dim light that filtered through the boards. He reached out, fingers trembling, and the moment his skin brushed metal, a flash. A vision. The bothy, aflame. His father kneeling in the snow, clutching the same black stone, screaming words Owen didn't understand. A ring of figures circled him, silent, hooded, the storm howling above. Then darkness swallowed it all. Owen staggered back, gasping. The key clattered to the floor, echoing like a shot. When he looked up, there was someone standing behind the bar. The man from the inn. The one with the cold dark eyes. He smiled, calm as a priest. He brought you back, didn't he? Owen's mouth went dry. What are you talking about? Your father. Harrison. He never finished the pact. The moor doesn't forget its debts, son. Owen shook his head violently. You're not real. The man leaned forward, hands braced on the counter. Real enough to watch him burn. His voice cracked, almost tender. He tried to fight it. Tried to bury it beneath your bothy. But you, he pointed a trembling finger, you dug it up again. Lightning split the sky outside, illuminating the pub for a heartbeat, and in that flash, the man was gone. The bar was empty. But the black stone in Owen's pocket throbbed with heat, like a coal plucked from the fire. He stumbled backward, bursting out into the rain. The wind screamed through the village, tugging at the broken doors and flapping shutters. Every house looked the same, empty, lifeless, yet light flickered faintly through the cracks, as if fires burned unseen behind every wall. He ran for the car, fumbling the keys. The ignition clicked once, twice, dead. Come on, damn it. He slammed the dashboard. The horn blared once, then fell silent. He caught movement in the rearview mirror, not one shape, but many. Figures emerging from the fog, their silhouettes warping, stretching. Some tall, some crawling, some barely human. Their eyes glowed dimly, like dying embers. Owen's pulse exploded in his ears. He threw the door open, bolting into the rain, slipping on the slick stones as he sprinted toward the road. The figures didn't run. They just followed, slow, deliberate, patient. He tripped, sprawling into the mud. When he looked up, the bothy stood before him. Not possible. He'd left it miles behind. But there it was, silent, waiting. Its chimney bled black smoke into the storm. Owen stumbled toward it, half crawling, half dragged by something unseen. The door yawned open, wind howling through the cracks. Inside, the hearth blazed with violent fire. And in front of it, a figure. Kneeling. His father. Or something wearing his father's shape. The skin hung loose, eyes hollow, lips moving soundlessly. The black stone hovered above the fire, spinning. Its carvings glowed like molten iron. Owen fell to his knees. Dad, please. Tell me what's happening. The figure turned. The voice that came wasn't human, a chorus of whispers fused into one. You brought it back. I didn't. You carried the key. You fed the fire. Blood remembers, boy. Always. Owen backed away, shaking his head. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to understand. The walls groaned, timber splitting as something vast moved beneath the floor. The fire flared, painting the room in a red haze. His father's body rose, limbs cracking like wet branches, eyes burning white. Finish it, the voice commanded. The black stone drifted toward Owen, hovering inches from his chest. He tried to turn, to flee, but his body refused. His hands rose involuntarily, palms open. The stone pressed against his heart, burning, searing through fabric and flesh. He screamed, collapsing as fire exploded behind his eyes. Then, silence. When he woke, the bothy was gone. He lay in the middle of a muddy field, the rain a soft patter now. Dawn had broken. The air smelled of heather and smoke. His clothes were dry. The black stone was gone. But the marks remained, spirals, carved faintly into his chest, raw and pulsing like new scars. A faint hum trembled in the air, almost a lullaby, distant yet familiar. The same voice from the inn. From the moor. From his father's grave. It whispered his name once. Then again. And when he looked toward the horizon, he saw figures moving through the fog, not approaching, not retreating, but circling. Waiting. To this day, hikers who cross the moor speak of a lone man rebuilding a stone house in the fog. He talks to the wind. And sometimes, the wind answers. Act 3 Segment 1, The Stalker's Vigil. The wind came down from the glacier like a living thing. It howled through the fjords and hammered the timber walls of the lodge, until every beam moaned in reply. Dylan Hargrove stood on the porch, hood up, breath fogging against the cold Patagonia night. The world beyond was a trembling void, black ridgelines cut against a deeper black sky, stars swallowed by moving clouds. The smell of salt and pine mixed in the air, sharp as glass. He'd driven 14 hours south to get here, chasing solitude like a drug he could never quit. His cousin's lodge stood on 40 acres of fenced wilderness, a holdover from a dream of ecotourism that had never materialized. Now it was a fortress in the middle of nowhere, solar panels, backup generator, and enough silence to drown a man's thoughts. Dylan shifted his duffel from the jeep to the porch, the gravel crunching under his boots. The lights flickered when he turned the key in the lock. The air inside was cold, stale, and smelled faintly of pine resin and ash. Dust motes spiraled through the flashlight beam. He found the generator panel, flipped the switch, and the place stirred to life, amber bulbs humming, the old refrigerator wheezing awake. He leaned against the door frame, letting the warmth seep in, and listened. The wind shrieked, then fell into a low moan across the valley. No other sound. No other movement. He tried to convince himself that was comforting. A message blinked on his phone from his cousin, Mateo. You'll be fine down there. Fence tight. Closest soul is 30 kilometers north. Call if shadows stir. He smirked. Mateo always had a way with words, half warning, half joke. Dylan pocketed the phone and moved room to room, turning on lights like staking a claim. The interior was simple, wood floors, a wide hearth of stone, a kitchen with steel fixtures, a narrow staircase leading to the loft. Everything smelled of rain and oil, a blend of wilderness and neglect. By midnight, he'd unpacked enough to feel human, a change of clothes, a thermos of coffee, and his laptop on the small table near the window. He played a film for background noise, anything to fill the oppressive stillness pressing against the glass. Halfway through the movie, he saw it. A flicker in the reflection, movement outside. Just a blur in the corner of his eye, gone before his head snapped up. He paused the film, heart thudding. The window stared back, black and infinite. Beyond the pane, faint traces of moonlight spilled across the frost-coated grass. Nothing else. He waited. Counted the seconds. The heater ticked in the silence. Then, soft as a whisper, crunch. Gravel shifting somewhere near the porch. He muted the TV. The next crunch was slower, deliberate. A boot? No, two, dragging slightly. He moved closer to the window, eyes scanning the darkness. For a moment, he thought he saw a figure, tall, hooded, half glimpsed in the dim light bleeding from the porch bulb. But then the bulb itself flickered and died. His pulse spiked. He grabbed his flashlight from the table and clicked it on. The beam swept across the yard, fence, gravel, the edge of the pines, empty. But the gate, the heavy iron gate he'd shut behind the jeep, stood wide open. He stepped back from the glass, breath coming fast. Probably wind, he muttered. His voice sounded alien in the empty lodge. He checked the latch on the front door twice before bolting it. Sleep wouldn't come. The film played muted in the background, its colors flashing like a heartbeat on the wall. Every creak became a footstep, every gust a hand against the siding. He dozed off at the table sometime near 3, head resting on folded arms, and dreamed of doors left ajar and voices whispering his name through the storm. The radio crackle woke him. At first, he thought it was thunder, but it came from the shortwave unit on the counter, one of Mateo's old security systems linked to the property fence sensors. Static hissed, then cleared into faint words. Movement registered, south perimeter. Dylan froze. The voice repeated once, mechanical, then silence. He forced himself to the window again, flashlight in hand. The beam swept across the trees. A shape darted between trunks, human, moving fast. The light caught a flash of metal, a buckle, a tool, something glinting. Christ, Dylan whispered. He snatched his phone, dialed Mateo. 1 ring. 2. The line clicked. You okay? Mateo's voice, groggy but alert. Someone's here, Dylan said. At the fence line, moving fast. Stay inside. Lock everything. I'm calling the local patrol now. They'll take 20 minutes minimum. That's too long. Then make it shorter, lights on, stay visible. Don't play hero. The call dropped. Dylan flicked every switch in the house. The lodge blazed like a lantern in the black fjord. He paced, watching the yard, but the shape didn't return. For a moment, he thought it might have been a hiker, a lost trekker from the glacier routes. But the way it moved, low, purposeful, was wrong. Not lost. Hunting. The knock came at 3:12 a.m. A single rap, not at the door, but the window beside it. Sharp. Deliberate. He turned, heart lurching into his throat. Another knock, softer this time, from the opposite side of the room. Then silence. Dylan backed toward the hallway, keeping his eyes on the glass. His reflection stared back, pale and ghostly. Outside, only shifting mist. The generator coughed and sputtered. Lights dimmed. Not now, he whispered, fumbling for the backup flashlight. In the half-light, the window nearest the kitchen caught his eye, a faint smear across the glass, like a handprint dragged downward. He took one step closer. The print was fresh, still wet, the lines sharp and human. A sound rose outside, not footsteps this time, but breathing. Slow. Heavy. Too close. He turned off the light and crouched low. The front door handle rattled once. Then again, harder. Metal creaked under strain. The sound stopped. Silence. Then a faint laugh, soft, almost mocking, before retreating into the wind. He didn't move until dawn. When the patrol arrived 2 hours later, headlights sweeping the driveway, Dylan opened the door with shaking hands. The officers combed the grounds, following the mud tracks along the fence. They stopped near the open gate. "Tracks are old," one said in Spanish, kneeling. 2 days, maybe more. Wind filled them. Dylan frowned. "That can't be. I saw him last night." The officer gave a tired smile. "You've been alone too long. This land plays tricks." But Dylan knew what he saw. The mud prints had depth, the shape of boots, not bare feet. And at the porch, beside the railing, one mark was fresh, the faint outline of a glove's palm, pressed against the wood. The kind of mark someone leaves when leaning close to look inside. He stared at it as the wind picked up again, scattering frost and pine needles across the porch. The officers left soon after, the road swallowing their tail lights until he was alone again with the moaning fjord. He shut the door, bolted it, and exhaled. The lodge was quiet now. Too quiet. But when he turned toward the kitchen, his blood froze. The window, the one with the smear, was spotless. Not a trace. Someone had wiped it clean. And on the counter beneath it, where his flashlight had been, sat a single folded note. The paper was damp, the ink smudged but still legible. "You shouldn't have left the gate open." The wind howled again through the valley, rattling the shutters like laughter. Act 3 Segment 2, The Stalker's Vigil. The morning came grey and hollow, a bruise of light crawling over the peaks. Dylan hadn't slept. The note lay where he'd left it, on the counter, beneath a mug of untouched coffee, edges curling from the damp. He'd read it a dozen times, turning the words over like stones in his palm. "You shouldn't have left the gate open." The wind outside had calmed, but the silence it left behind was worse. Even the fjord sounded muted, as if the world was holding its breath. He checked the locks again, every latch, every hinge, every window. The doors held, the glass was unbroken. But the small things told a different story. His boots, which he'd left by the fire, were now neatly side by side, the dish towel he'd hung on the oven handle was gone, and the small clock above the hearth had stopped frozen at 3:12 a.m. The same minute he'd heard the knock. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe he'd moved the boots himself. Maybe the clock had died during the power flicker. The human mind, he reminded himself, could spin panic into patterns that weren't there. But the thought didn't hold. Not when he looked at the note again. The handwriting was foreign, angular, almost deliberate, as if carved more than written. He burned it. Watched the paper twist and blacken, ash curling into the cold air from the wood stove. By afternoon, clouds rolled in from the west, dense, low, and the color of iron. Snow followed, thick and sudden, swallowing the fjord in a blizzard that erased the horizon. The radio crackled with bursts of static, voices cutting in and out. Somewhere between the interference, a faint melody played, slow, rhythmic, like humming. Dylan turned the dial. The music persisted, weaving through the static like a whisper behind glass. He slammed the switch off, jaw tight. "Just interference," he muttered. "That's all." He packed. Quickly. By sundown, his duffel was zipped, jeep loaded, maps spread across the table. He couldn't explain it, but every instinct screamed at him to leave before nightfall. He folded the route to the nearest outpost, 80 kilometers north, and shoved it in his jacket. The wind picked up again, sharp and unnatural. He checked the porch, no tracks, no sign of anyone. Still, he felt watched. The same sensation he'd felt as a kid lost in the woods, that the forest itself was breathing, aware. When the power cut, it happened all at once, a pop, then complete darkness. The heater's hum vanished. The air seemed to thicken, dense with the smell of cold wood and fear. He clicked his flashlight on, beam slicing through the gloom. The generator should have kicked in automatically. It didn't. He moved toward the utility room, floorboards creaking. The flashlight trembled in his grip. Every sound echoed tenfold, the rasp of his coat, his heartbeat, the crunch of snow outside. The latch on the generator panel was bent. Not broken, but twisted slightly, like someone had forced it. "Mateo," he whispered, fumbling with his phone. No signal. Not even a bar. The flashlight dimmed, flickered. Then, a faint thud from upstairs. He froze, listening. Another thud. Slow. Heavy. The sound of deliberate weight shifting across old wood. He looked up. Dust rained from the beams above the kitchen. Someone was in the loft. He moved backward toward the front door, steps measured, breathing shallow. Every muscle screamed for silence. He reached for the latch, and stopped when a voice floated down from the dark. "Leaving so soon?" It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. Just calm, too calm. A man's voice, low, measured, with the faint trace of an accent that wasn't local. Dylan's skin went cold. He swung the flashlight upward, beam cutting across the ceiling. The light caught a shape leaning over the railing, a man, face shadowed by the loft's edge. All Dylan could see were the eyes, gleaming faintly in the beam's edge. "Who the hell are you?" Dylan barked, stepping back, hand fumbling for the keys in his pocket. The figure tilted his head slightly, like a predator studying its prey. "You left the gate open," the man said softly. "That's how they come in." The words hit Dylan like a blow, the same line from the note. He bolted for the door. The figure moved, fast, too fast. A crash from above, footsteps pounding the stairs. Dylan wrenched the door open, cold air slicing across his face. He stumbled onto the porch, sprinting through the snow toward the jeep. His boots sank deep with every step, lungs burning from the cold. Behind him, the door slammed open. The man's silhouette burst into the storm, blurred by wind and white. Dylan jammed the key into the ignition. The engine coughed, stalled, caught again. The headlights flared, illuminating the fence line. The gate closed. He hadn't closed it. The man was halfway down the porch steps, stride steady, knife glinting faintly in his hand. Dylan slammed the accelerator. The jeep fishtailed, snow spraying in arcs. He crashed through the gate, wood splintering under the bumper. The tires screamed for traction, as he tore down the gravel track toward the road. The headlights carved a tunnel through the storm, but visibility was near zero. He risked a glance in the rearview mirror. The lodge was gone, swallowed by the storm. But something darker moved in the whiteout, not the man, not human. A tall shape, black as ink, gliding between gusts of snow, following the vehicle with inhuman ease. Dylan blinked hard, shaking his head. "Just the wind," he muttered. "Just." A shape lunged across the headlights. He swerved violently, tires catching the edge of an embankment. The jeep skidded sideways, slammed into a snowbank with a deafening crunch. Airbags exploded, blinding him with white. Silence followed. When his hearing returned, it came with the sound of the engine ticking, metal groaning under strain. He forced the airbag aside, coughing. The windshield was cracked, smeared with frost. He tried the door. Stuck. The radio crackled again, faint, buried under static. Then the same humming melody returned. Only this time, it wasn't through the speakers. It came from outside, from the dark. He froze, eyes darting to the passenger window. A face pressed against the glass. Pale. Smiling. Eyes glassy with reflection. The same man. Dylan screamed, slamming his shoulder into the door. It burst open, he stumbled into the storm, snow cutting at his skin like shards. He ran, anywhere, away from the jeep, away from the figure. The snow was blinding, the world reduced to sound and panic. Behind him, faint laughter, too close, too calm. He tripped over a buried root, fell hard, rolled down an incline, and landed in a hollow at the base of a ridge. Pain flared through his ribs. He clawed his way behind a fallen tree, breath fogging the air. Silence. The humming stopped. He listened, nothing but the wind. The dark pressed in. Minutes passed. Maybe hours. When he dared to move, the storm had thinned. The jeep was gone. Not wrecked, gone, as if it had never existed. Only churned snow remained, footprints already half filled by the wind. He staggered upright, dazed, body aching. His phone was cracked but flickered to life, 4:03 a.m., battery at 8%. He turned on the flashlight. The beam trembled across the snow, catching something glinting ahead, metal, half buried. He brushed snow away. The license plate from his Jeep. Torn clean off. His heart hammered. He looked up. On the ridge above, a figure stood silhouetted against the dawn. The same hooded man. Still. Watching. Dylan took one step back, then another, until the figure blurred with the mist and vanished. He stood there until the first light broke over the fjord, the mountains swallowing the last traces of night. When he finally reached the outpost 6 hours later, frostbitten and wild-eyed, the rangers found no jeep, no tracks, and no sign of any other person. Only a single object lying in the snow near the ridge. A glove. Leather, weathered. Inside, a scrap of paper. You closed it this time. The ranger frowned. Closed what? Dylan couldn't answer. He only stared out at the horizon, where the storm clouds parted just enough to reveal the faint glimmer of the sea, endless, silent, and watching back. Act 3 Segment 3, The Stalker's Vigil. By the time Dylan reached Puerto Tranquilo, the world had begun to feel unreal. The town, if it could still be called that, was little more than a clutch of weather-beaten shacks strung along a cracked road that hugged the fjord. A handful of boats bobbed at their moorings, clinking like restless bones. He parked the borrowed Ranger truck near a gas station that hadn't seen customers in days, the wind rocking the sign above the canopy. His hands trembled as he filled a thermos with coffee inside the station's tiny cafe. The woman behind the counter, silver hair, eyes sharp with the kind of suspicion born from isolation, watched him closely. "You're not from around here," she said flatly. Dylan nodded, his voice hoarse. "Just passing through." Her gaze lingered on the blooded cut along his jaw, the dried dirt crusted around his collar. "You look like hell. Storm got you." He hesitated. "Something like that." "Where from?" "Lodge. North of the fjord." At that, she froze, the coffee pot halted mid-pour. "There's no lodge north of the fjord." Dylan looked up. There was. Timber house, near the old ferry track. Her eyes narrowed. Was. Burned down 6 winters ago. Lightning took it. Nothing left but the foundation stones. The words hit him like a blow. His mind reeled. "No, he stopped." There was no point arguing. She was staring at him like someone might stare at a madman lost in the woods. He forced a thin smile. "Maybe I'm thinking of another one." She didn't smile back. Just set the coffee down and said, "Best keep driving. Storm's coming again. Winds shift strange this time of year." He paid, left a crumpled bill, and stepped back into the cold. The road wound along the fjord like a scar, the mountains rising like titans on either side. He drove for hours, the world narrowing to headlights and mist. Every so often, he'd check the mirror, always the same empty stretch of road behind him. And yet, the feeling remained. The sense of being shadowed. By nightfall, he found a roadside motel on the edge of a fishing hamlet, 3 rooms, 1 light flickering outside the office. The keeper, an old man with rheumy eyes, handed over a key without a word. "Any other guests?" Dylan asked. "Just you," the man said. "And me." The room was cold but clean. He locked the door, checked the window latches twice, then sat on the edge of the bed, the cheap lamp buzzing faintly beside him. His reflection stared back from the mirror above the dresser, hollow-eyed, skin gray from exhaustion. He thought of calling Mateo again. The phone lay on the nightstand, cracked and nearly dead. No service. Instead, he opened his laptop. It booted slowly, the fan groaning like a dying thing. The background image, a photo from the trip's first day, showed him smiling beside the jeep, sunlight on the water behind him. He didn't recognize that version of himself anymore. He clicked open the folder labeled trip footage. Dozens of video files filled the screen, time-stamped over the past few days. He didn't remember recording half of them. Hands shaking, he opened one. The camera jolted, shaky, grainy. It showed the lodge interior by firelight. Himself moving across the frame, carrying logs, laughing softly to someone off-camera. Dylan frowned. He hadn't laughed once since arriving. He skipped ahead. The next clip showed the same scene, same angle, same lighting, but he wasn't in it. Only the chair by the hearth, rocking gently. He clicked another. The camera was outside now, staring at the lodge from the tree line. The lens zoomed slowly, as if searching for something. A voice, faint, almost a whisper, drifted through the speakers. "You left the gate open." Dylan slammed the laptop shut, pulse hammering. His reflection stared at him again, fractured across the dark screen. A knock shattered the silence. 3 slow, deliberate raps. He froze. The clock on the nightstand read 3:12 a.m. He stood, every nerve raw, and moved toward the door. The peephole was fogged, distorted. He wiped it with his sleeve. Nothing. No one stood outside. Only the road, shimmering under thin moonlight. He exhaled, and nearly laughed. He was unraveling. That was all. The note, the voice, the footage, hallucinations born of exhaustion. He turned back toward the bed. A shadow crossed the wall. Not his. It moved against the light, slow, deliberate, tall. The outline of a hooded figure, shoulders hunched, head tilted. Dylan spun, grabbing the lamp, its cord snapping from the socket. "Who's there?" he shouted. No answer. He lunged to the window, threw back the curtain. The glass reflected his face, and behind him, in the mirror above the dresser, the shadow moved. It wasn't in the room. It was in the reflection. His breath caught. He took a step back, staring. The mirror shimmered faintly, the surface rippling like water. The figure stood just beyond it, distorted but unmistakable, eyes burning through the glass. He hurled the lamp. It shattered the mirror, the reflection imploding in a spray of shards. Darkness swallowed the room. For a long moment, nothing moved. Only Dylan's ragged breathing filled the air. Then, from the floor, a whisper, faint as the shifting of snow. "You closed it this time." He stumbled backward, tripping over the chair, crashing to the ground. His flashlight rolled from his pocket, spinning a beam across the floorboards. The light caught a handprint, dark, wet, smeared along the doorframe. He crawled to it. The wood was cold, slick with something like melted frost. Beyond the door, silence. The hum of the motel's neon sign outside buzzed faintly, flickering through the broken window. He grabbed his duffel and bolted. The old man was gone from the office. The key rack hung empty. Outside, the air was still, the world frozen in pale light. He climbed into the Ranger truck, fumbling the ignition. The engine turned once, twice, then died. He cursed, pounding the wheel. Tried again. Nothing. The radio crackled on its own. Through the static came a faint voice, soft, almost melodic. Gates closed. Doors open. He looked up. Every door of the motel, all three, now stood ajar. A shadow shifted within one of them. Dylan shoved the door open and ran. Into the road, into the trees, into the black. The wind clawed at him, dragging his breath away. He didn't look back. Couldn't. Hours later, the world began to pale again. The first light of dawn bled over the peaks, painting the fjord in bruised silver. He stumbled upon a ranger outpost, collapsed against the fence. When they found him, he was half frozen, muttering the same words over and over. You close one door, it opens another. The local police returned to the motel. There was no old man, no guests, no sign of struggle. The mirror in Dylan's room was shattered, but the shards, every one of them, were turned face down. The rangers brought Dylan back to town, where he sat for hours in the small clinic, staring at the window. His cousin Mateo called, voice shaking. Dylan, I checked the property. There's no lodge, man. Just the ruins of one. It burned down years ago. Dylan said nothing. Mateo's voice cracked. There's something else. We found your Jeep. Or what's left of it. The plates are gone, but inside, the glove box, there was a note. Dylan swallowed hard. What did it say? Mateo hesitated. It just said, see you next winter. The line went dead. Outside, the wind howled again, scraping against the windows. Dylan stared into the glass, his reflection staring back, pale, hollow-eyed. For a heartbeat, the reflection smiled. He blinked. It didn't. The wind subsided, carrying the faintest echo of humming, a melody almost human, almost kind. The sound faded into the distance, lost among the peaks. And as the first snow began to fall over Patagonia again, Dylan Hargrove, the last of the Hargrove line, finally closed his eyes, not to rest, but to listen.